Peace, everybody. Coach Jason here, back with another video to talk about the big heavyweight card, Luis Ortiz, Charles Martin, Fox pay-per-view. I actually sat home and watched it, and most of the fights. I think I started it right before the second fight. So I'll probably talk about some of the undercards, but really this is about Ortiz and Martin. So good fight. Didn't last very long, but lots to unpack because we're talking about an all heavyweight card, and these two guys kind of sitting in that, maybe top 10-ish, top 15, 20-ish kind of heavyweight rankings, considering all the movement that's happened recently. So interesting to see where they go with this. So where they go from here, actually. So Ortiz got the win by knockout, TKO actually. Had Charles Martin in another planet for a little bit. So, it's a good win for him, especially after having a long layoff. Charles Martin himself also had a pretty decent layoff. So, for him, they both were kind of in the same boat, so you can't really say one was more active than the other or anything like that. So, you could really scrap that part of any conversation. So, how did the fight play out? Well, Charles Martin seemed to start off pretty good. He kind of controlled the pace, was landing good shots, seemed to be kind of, getting the better of Ortiz. It was kind of 50-50 in all actuality, but I feel like Martin had the momentum. He also got 2 knockdowns, but the knockdowns, seemed like flash knockdowns more than anything, and it seemed like Ortiz's footwork was more the issue, or at least part of the issue of why he got knocked down. So, to me, it was a lot closer than it might have seemed, taking the 2 knockdowns into account. So, yeah, Martin looked pretty good. But then he got caught by Ortiz at one point, and that pretty much ended the fight. Ortiz is a finisher, so if he gets his guy hurt, he's not gonna let him live too long. He's gonna go after him. So, really, with a win like this, where does Ortiz go from here? He's in a particular spot where he has not had the matchups in the heavyweight division that he probably wanted to have all these years. He's got 2 fights with Wilder, lost both fights, but was very, very competitive in both fights. Luis Ortiz is a man that everybody is avoiding. Let's be clear about that. He has been avoided by a lot of the division, seemingly not having a good risk reward. He's a guy who's 42 years old. Even then, when we were talking about years ago, he was in his late 30s, obviously. So not a guy you're looking at as a future champion, but has all the skills to be such, right? So those guys who were holding the belts at the time, Wilder, who did take the risk twice, actually. But the Joshuas and anybody who was, a step under them in the rankings were really avoiding him. So he doesn't really have the resume. But when you look at how he fights, and sometimes that has to mean something, is that you can't just look at who someone has fought. You have to look at how they fought the guys they did fight. And Luis Ortiz, as we all know, is a good boxer. He's a southpaw. He's a big hitter. He's a knockout puncher. So these are all things that stack up really well against anybody in the division. Literally anybody. The only, caveat we're always going to give him is his age. He's 42 now. Like, time is ticking by the moment. And judging by this fight he just had, it's really tossing up a coin about how you think he's going to look from fight to fight, because his legs look really shaky. I don't know what that was from. You know, listen, he had a layoff, right? He's been out of the ring for quite a while, and on top of that, he's 42, and then he's fighting Martin, who's also a southpaw. So there's a lot of reasons why you could give him an excuse or look at him a certain way as to why you think he's probably not having a future in the heavyweight division. But I would beg to differ. I think he doesn't have a lot of miles on him. Granted, got knocked out by Wilder pretty bad. But other than that, he's mostly dominated all his fights and had pretty, seemingly easy wins. So he has room to have a few good fights, if not a title run. So I think we should look at Ortiz in that way, as someone who's still in that contender for a title. And I would love to see him match up with some of the guys that are right there at the very top. Like Ruiz. An Ortiz-Ruiz fight would be compelling. Maybe Ortiz and Joseph Parker. That would be a good fight. Now, again, I don't follow this promotional line and politics of boxing. I'm talking stuff in my head. You follow, you guys are going to correct me. Have your comments, talk amongst yourselves about all that stuff. I don't really care. I'm talking dream matchups, things I want to see. Crossing the street on all those promotional lines. Who cares? Not for me. But I love to see fights like that. So there's plenty. The heavyweight division's pretty stacked right now. A lot of good matchups. So I love to see him in a real good, compelling fight to really see where he's at, see what he can do. There's other things than titles. Let's be clear. Let's be real about it. Make your name. Make your name, make some money, and listen, at 42, maybe that's what matters most, So that's my opinion on that. Now, Charles Martin. Charles Martin, kind of in a similar boat if you really think about it. He's had more losses, but again, hasn't had a ton of matchups that would, cement his legacy as someone who didn't get that title. He actually held the title. He had the IBF title right before Joshua beat him for it. But it was kind of unheralded. That was his only defense, which he lost. So really not much to say there, and didn't really have any stellar wins to his credit. But again, looking at how he fights, he's a good fighter. He has skills. So he can still be in the mix. But does he become a gatekeeper at this point? Especially with the loss to Ortiz. Because Ortiz, again, another, he's a title challenger to Wilder. So probably in the eyes of most, he's probably held a little bit higher in regard to Martin. But does Martin still have something left? Does he, can he salvage his career by having other compelling matchups with up-and-coming fighters or other guys in that top, 10 to 15, top 20, of the heavyweight division? So I like to see him do more. I think he has. Listen, he got caught. That's the truth. He got caught by Ortiz. Ortiz wasn't necessarily doing any better than he was. It was 50-50 up to a certain point, although Martin got those knockdowns. It was probably, again, not really... It wasn't the type of knockdowns that you look at a guy like in danger, because you looked at Ortiz's footwork and legs, and you seen a guy who was looking old. That's really what he looked like. So Martin was just doing his job. So he still has more to prove, still has something left. So let's see if he... avoids being the gatekeeper at this point. And so let's move on. So the rematch between Jonnie Rice and Michael Coffie. They had a fight earlier this year, and Coffie got stopped by Jonnie Rice. I don't know if his name is Rice or Johnny or whatever, but he got stopped. And you know, this was supposed to be basically the rematch to put, you know, Michael Coffie back in that, you know, up and coming heavyweight category after having that, you know, that one defeat. You know, he was seemingly on a roll, you know, good knockout ratio. I actually trained with the guy before, so I know him pretty well. And but in this fight, both guys just flat out looked horrible. Let's just be, I'm gonna call it what it is, because they gonna call it, you know, why not? They both looked heavy, way out of shape. By the midpoint of the fight, both guys were literally gassed, just surviving. And, you know, ultimately, it went to decision, and Michael Coffie loses the fight. And it's disappointing because Rice came in heavier than his last fight, looking pretty out of shape. I mean, he was 280 plus pounds, and he looked bad. You know, he has skills though. He's better than his record. He's a good boxer. He's slick. He can move. You know, does the right things at the right times a lot. You know, just wasn't heralded the way Michael Coffie was. Michael Coffie has a better record over, you know, not being undefeated before their first meeting. And I think that, you know, Coffie didn't come prepared. You know, Coffie just didn't come prepared. He should have been, you know, more motivated to really step on the gas and get him out of there. And at times he was doing well. You know, he had opportunities to really like change the momentum of the fight. But I think he gets to the point where he likes to switch stances and things like that, and, you know, really trying to be the slick boxer instead of being dominant. And there's a difference. You know, you gotta actually go out and just dominate your opponent instead of just showing that you can box. Because the switching didn't really do anything. It didn't do anything. And a lot of times it doesn't do anything in any of his fights. It doesn't really make a difference. It's really about the attack on whichever stance you're gonna make. It's all about the attack, not the attempt. And he didn't really make the attempt. It wasn't really a stepping on the gas moment long enough to look like he was ever gonna win the fight. So, you know, by the time half the fight came around, it was already going downhill. So, and then the undercard, I don't even know these guys' names, but all I know, the first fight of the night was just a bunch of knockdowns. If you have a chance to find out who these guys were, Kalaji and I forgot the other guy's name, but it was crazy. So that was entertaining, very entertaining. So two European guys or whatever they were fighting, knocking each other down. So yeah, that was interesting. So if you saw the fight, let me know what you saw. I thought it was an excellent first fight for the night, but ultimately, you know, the main event came and Ortiz got the knockout after being in a little bit of trouble. And then the, you know, co-main with Jonnie Rice and Michael Coffie was pretty much a disappointment. So, all right, that's all I got. See you on the next one.